Hey BookTube! I'm Lisa and today I'm reviewing Graffiti Moon by Cath Crowley. So basically this book is about a girl named Lucy who is in love with a graffiti artist named Shadow. She doesn't know who he is, but she decides that on her last day of year 12 she wants to find him. She runs around all night with a guy named Ed who says he knows Shadow and will help her find him. But she doesn't realize that Ed is not who she thinks he is. Throughout the night, things happen, friendships are formed and broken, and basically we just learn about the characters. For the most part, I liked the story of the book. I thought it was really interesting. I've never really read anything like it before. I love the idea of chasing around a graffiti artist that nobody really knows. It feels very Banksy-like and it's super exciting. This book takes place across one night. We follow around Lucy and Ed as they try to find Shadow and his friend Poet. I like the way it was written. It doesn't really feel like it takes place in one night. There's a lot of flashbacks and old scenes from their lives, and we learn a lot about them while we're reading them. As main characters, Lucy and Ed were alright, but I can't really say that I was in love with them, especially not Lucy. She was super delusional for most of the book, and sometimes she came off just like downright judgmental, and I wasn't really on board with it. She made a lot of childish decisions throughout the book, which I guess is to be expected because she's only like 18 years old, but it was pretty frustrating for me to read. I liked Ed a lot more, but he also did have his faults. But overall, Ed and Lucy were good characters, and I liked reading about them. I actually liked the secondary characters more than the main characters. There were a lot of like good friends and role models and parents, and it was just really nice to read about them. They were all flawed, but they were still very likable. Overall, they seemed like a bunch of people that you would want to know. So overall, this book was really good and worthwhile. I gave it 3.5 stars on Goodreads. I liked it. It wasn't really my favorite, but it was worth the read, and I'm glad that I read it. Alright, so that was it for the non-spoiler portion of this review. If you've read this book before and want to hear more about what I think, then go ahead and keep watching. If you don't want to be spoiled, then click out now. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is Lucy was an okay character, but she annoyed the crap out of me. She was so delusional all the time. There was like never a break from it. I just wanted to like scream at her like, please, can you like take a break from the delusions? You can do it, I promise. It was just like so frustrating to sit there and like listen to her talk about how she's like in love with Shadow or how she could be in love with him or whatever. I'm like, come on, you don't even know who he is. You're in love with his paintings. You're in love with the idea of him. I was just like, oh my God. And then when she found out that he's not that great of a person, not that he's a bad person, but he's a person that's thinking about doing bad things. And then when she found out about that, she like got scared and didn't want to like him anymore. And I'm just like, well, that's what happens when you judge people. That girl, ugh. Also, Malcolm Dove is supposed to be this like super scary psychopathic villain, but his whole like craziness is based off of the fact that he ate a cockroach. And then when he caught up to Lucy and Ed, his form of punishment was giving her a nipple piercing and then piercing Ed's ear. And I'm just like, huh? This guy's supposed to be a psychopath and all he's gonna do is like pierce Ed's ear with a compass? I don't care if the compass is dirty. That just doesn't seem that scary to me for this guy that's supposed to be super crazy and super scary. It felt kind of like one of those villains that you would find in a children's show. It's like a villain, but it's super watered down so as not to be too scary or something. I don't know. I just thought Malcolm Dove was supposed to be very intimidating and he just wasn't. Maybe that's just me though. I also felt like the whole Malcolm Dove situation was resolved too easily. Again, it felt like one of those children's shows where it's like everything's hitting the fan and it's all horrible and bad, and then all of a sudden one thing happens and it's hunky-dory, everything's fine. I guess what I'm trying to say is I felt like as a villain, he could have had more to him. He could have been scarier. He could have been more threatening, and I just didn't get that from him. I can understand why they would be scared of him, but in a novel, it just didn't seem that impactful. I really like that this book was told in basically 3 different perspectives. There's Lucy's, there's Ed's, and then there's also a few novels in verse by Poet. I actually really liked Poet's poems in this book. They weren't trying too hard to be poetic, even though they technically were poems. They were more down to earth, which is my style, so it was pretty great. I had a lot of trouble when they were explaining the paintings and stuff. Like, they were explaining what was happening happening in the painting, but I had a really difficult time like imagining it. I wish that there was like pictures to accompany the book, although the book doesn't need it, but this is more like a me problem than anything. Also, a lot of the time I found myself stopping to Google the artists in the works that they were talking about in the book. Which brings me to my next point. Why is like everybody in this book an artist? Like everybody either paints or they write poems or they draw or they do this or that. And it's like, why is everybody an artist? Like, why can't there be a mathematician that's not very good at art? I don't really understand. Maybe it's just the clique they were in. I'm not sure. As somebody who's pretty sucky at art, that really stood out to me because it seemed like everybody was artistically inclined. And that doesn't seem very realistic to life. As a whole though, I felt like this book was very good at staying realistic. Like even Lucy being delusional, she's a teenage girl. That's like how it is, honestly. And even with Malcolm Dove, I said that I had a problem with him not being scary enough, but who knows, maybe he really wasn't that scary. There are a lot of people who try to be tough guys and they're fronting completely. I don't know if Malcolm is one of them, but it's possible. I will give this book that much. I stick with my 3.5 star rating because I did like this book, but I probably wouldn't read it again. But I do recommend it if contemporary is in your interest. Anyway, that's all I have. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!